Okay, let's open a word of prayer. Lord, thanks so much for today. Pray that you'll bless our time together, and that we'll be able to get through some of these things in a coherent fashion in the crazy world that we live in. Bless us this week in Jesus' name, amen. Well, today, where to begin? You may have noticed there were a lot of things that happened this week. In fact, it's one of these things where I get to Sunday, and I look back on the week, and I start thinking about, okay, now wait a minute, what happened this week? Well, that was 3 weeks. No, that wasn't 3 weeks ago. It was Monday, or it was Tuesday or Wednesday. Do you feel like that a lot of time? I feel like it. So this is my little chessboard. I'm going to work on that eventually, but the world needs to sort of, it'd be nice if all these people in the world would just kind of take a break and let us alone for a while. So we talk about this each week: acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. I want you to know that I did some interviews this week. I did a couple hours with Mark Sutherland from the UK. You can find those on Rumble. I post mostly the links on my social media like Facebook and Twitter and Telegram and True Social and Getter. But this week, like when I did the interview with Mark Sutherland, I went to Facebook and posted it. And on Facebook, though, when I post a post, because I also manage a couple of other pages, like the church page, it says, hey, do you want to post this to these other pages? And all I have to do is do a little check mark and post, and it'll do it, to 3 pages at once. Now Facebook is taking down my posts when I do what they offer to let me do, saying, well, it appears that you're just trying to get likes. I thought that was the whole purpose of Facebook. Why do you have a like button, you morons? I'm sorry, Zuckerberg. So I did a couple of interviews with Mark Sutherland, 2 hours, 2 one-hour interviews. I also did some other interviews that'll post this week: David Fiorazo, J.B. Hickson. I have some interviews this week with some people in Israel. And then Wednesday night, I'll be doing a prophecy roundtable on technology, technocracy, transhumanism, AI, and related subjects with Patrick Wood, Britt Gillette, and Scott Townsend. That'll start at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll be posting that on social media, assuming Facebook, maybe even Facebook, if they let me. I did do some other posts, by the way. I took out Mark Sutherland's name and they went through. So apparently Mark has ticked somebody off. So you know what that means? It means you need to go follow Mark's channel. Mark's done some great videos, and met him about 5 years ago. So, and I have a conference coming up in early September in California, geopolitics. Brandon Holthouse, Tom Hughes, some other guys in Woodland Hills, California, the first Thursday and Friday in September 6th and 7th or something like that. Then I'll be doing 412 Church in Temecula, California on September the 8th. Also a conference with Mike Spalding and some other guys the end of September, and then another one out in California with, I think this one, we're trying to really calm things down, so I believe Tom Hughes is calling it the End of the World Conference. And I'll be doing that in early November. So be a busy fall for us, so pray for us and pray that the rest of the world kind of slows down so I can kind of get some other talks prepared. And this is the one we talk about all the time too. And I do think, I have some comments near the end from a Orthodox Jewish rabbi. And he used to be an attorney. He was an attorney at a big Chicago firm that I actually interviewed with when I was coming out of law school. But he's now a rabbi. He lives in Jerusalem. And he has some interesting comments that I think will relate to Daniel chapter 12. And I only say it when I play these clips, I want you to understand. For example, a rabbi who might be talking about Scripture and different aspects of Scripture. I'm not necessarily agreeing with all of their approaches, but I'm trying to show you that there is something going on. There is something being stirred within the Jewish people about Mashiach, Gog, Magog, these wars and all of these things are happening at the end times. And they're looking at prophecy and the prophets. And they're looking, by the way, well, wait till we get there. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. I might have some other comments about the ICJ, but I don't think I'm going to have time to get to it. So I'm going to just sort of do some cultural things first that are happening that I think we need to talk about. Some things that you may have missed, some things you may have seen. It's a crazy world. So this was a press release the other day from the United States Department of Justice. Now remember, the United States also has in place a thing called, what do they call that? The First Amendment. That says you have a right of free speech and assembly, peaceful assembly. And you know that's been applied to these various groups over the last couple of years, that they don't even have to peacefully assemble, and they still get to assemble, and they can do vandalism. And we saw some examples of that this week. I don't think I have any pictures of it, but I'm sure you saw the pictures of the protests in D.C. when Netanyahu was there. So here's a lady, African-American, Beverlyn Beatty Williams. She's from Tennessee. She went to a protest at an abortion clinic in New York. Here's a little bit bigger post on that. Tennessee woman sentenced to 41 months in prison for violating the Freedom of Access to Abortion Interests Act, the FACE Act. And you know, the Biden administration, Department of Justice under Merrick Garland and his U.S. attorneys, particularly in the Southern District of New York, and by the way, this lady's from Tennessee. I guess she did go to New York and do a protest. And they called it a violent protest. She was praying and preaching the gospel outside an abortion clinic. For that, she will get 41 months in prison, 3.5 years, and 2 years of supervised release after she's released from prison. They are destroying people's lives. They are doing this because these people stand up for the right to life. They're not out there saying, oh, well, you know, it's okay for Hamas to kill people in Gaza and deface monuments in Washington, D.C. with vile statements, painting Hamas. What was the one they painted on the monument in D.C. near Union Station? Hamas is coming. So for preaching the gospel, Merrick Garland, this evil, vile, wicked, subhuman person, I'm sorry, I know that sounds a bit judgmental. And then a whole bunch of other things that I probably should not say as to what I think of this person. His DOJ, and by the way, they put out this giant press release to look at what we did. And the reason they did that is because they want you to look at what they did, because they want you to shut up. And if you don't shut up, they're coming after you. And in light of this, for Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts and Brett Kavanaugh to join with the liberal lunatics on the court and not allow people to challenge the censorship panels that have been set up by our government is, it's certainly a harbinger of where we are and what's coming. So that was in the First Amendment case, and they said, well, you don't have standing to challenge it. You don't have any skin in the game. So does Beverlyn Beatty Williams, does she have skin in the game? Well, she has skin in prison because she was exercising her right of free speech. I will tell you, so, you know, so there's a view of end times that says, well, they're just doing this to provoke you and get you upset, and then somebody's going to come along and fix everything, and you're going to fall for the deception of that guy and follow him as the Antichrist. And honestly, I think that view is incoherent, illogical, and it's interesting, but it's very confusing. Because and a lot of that is based on a certain candidate for president as the Antichrist. A lot of people are convinced of that. And I mean, you ought to see my email, my Facebook feed, or YouTube video comments that I look at. I'm telling you, there are about 20 or 30 views of the Antichrist. There's about 10 different views of Gog Magog. It just goes on and on and on. And everyone is sure that they're right. So a friend of mine put up a video this week, which I thought was very well done. I'm not going to, well, it was Nelson Walters on the 10 kingdoms that might be in this final beast empire. And Nelson's a friend of mine. I did a webinar for him about a week or two ago for his I think it's called End Time Overcomers or something, group that he has. You can probably find it out there on YouTube. And we talked about some of these things, and I thought it was very well done. Now, maybe there's some rough edges on it and that sort of thing, but the vile comments that these people who call themselves Christian, is just unbelievable. Folks, if you're posting garbage like that, you really need to examine yourself to see whether you are of the faith. You can disagree with them, okay, but I'm telling you, it's shocking. And I know Nelson to be very careful and a very deep, involved researcher. Whether you agree with his conclusions or not, that's not the point. The point is that chill a little bit, draft your comment someplace outside of social media, and then go back to it in about 5 or 6 hours and see if it's marinated very well before you post it. By the way, I do that because, you get emotional and that type of thing, and there's plenty of things to be outraged about today. And so then the question is, what are Christians supposed to do when they're outraged? Now, I have no problem with Christians fighting against this nonsense, exercising their constitutional rights. Even when I read Romans 13, it says, let every soul be subject to the higher powers, to the government authorities. And there's a lot of controversy over how that should be interpreted. But if you live in a culture where you're allowed to challenge the government, I don't think Romans 13 says you should keep your mouth shut. I honestly don't. You certainly wouldn't keep it shut if they said don't share the gospel. So that's another thing. So this is a big deal. Now, the other big deal socially, I guess, culturally this week was the opening of the Olympics. And they know this is a very high-profile event. It's the highest profile event in the world right now. So they need to have security. I hear they have 10,000 French troops in Paris. The opening, I did not watch the opening ceremony because my feed was filled with tweets and posts and everything about people who did watch it. But before the ceremony started, and they were bringing people down the Seine River, I guess they're having people swim in this thing, and it's like full of sewage. At least it was a couple weeks ago. I don't know that they flushed all of that away, so to speak. But here, the French railways, the morning of the Olympics, are supposed to start major coordinated, at the same time, arson attacks across the French high-speed rail network. It affected 800,000 travelers. It affected trains coming through the tunnel, the tunnel underneath the English Channel from England to France. And I believe the whole team from the UK was going to come to France by train. This is kind of interesting. They're having all kinds of logistical problems. Athletes, they have very specific diets that they eat and their training and that type of thing. And what's the big problem right now in the Olympic Village? food. They're getting, this is from French chefs and everything, and they're getting uncooked meat, spoiled food, and all these things. So the athletes are actually going out and getting takeout from restaurants to eat. And some countries, I think the UK did this, sent a couple of chefs over from the UK to cook for their team. Now, you would think that the French, so I don't think that the Olympic Village dining facilities are going to get any Michelin stars for fine quality dining this year, but you would think that the French would do this, and you would think the French would think, we need to watch our railways. So the railways are they're completely shut down across France. And so these are, by the way, this is the Financial Times on the right, the Times of London on the left. On Saturday morning, French railway hit. This is from a French newspaper. But what you had to do is you had to go so this is page 4. So you had to go into like page 4 to find out in a French newspaper that this even happened. So it just seems like somebody's trying to control the narrative there just a bit. And you can see there's all these people going, and we just had a huge outage, IT outage all over the world that affected a lot of airlines. And there's controversy now. Was it intentional? Did they do it on purpose? It does appear from what IT people writing to me have said is that there was an update done on this CrowdStrike software, and that's when all the problems began. It didn't affect Mac computers. Some people claim that there are sort of these little lines of code that somebody can exploit at some time in Macs, in Windows computers, and that type of thing. And I was seeing videos of people that had been stuck at Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta for 5 days. Now, by the way, and they were going someplace in the U.S., you can drive anywhere in the U.S. in less than 5 days, easily, but you can't get a rental car if there's no rental cars. And you can't get a hotel if there are no hotels. So these people are sleeping on the floor in the hospital. I had a friend who had a child who was traveling unaccompanied, and he was stuck in an airport about 1,000 miles away. And he got in his car and drove and picked his child up. Because he didn't know. I mean, you got a 13-year-old kid who's stuck at an airport in a town that they're not familiar with. They can't drive anywhere. And it was a huge problem. And it's not over yet. I mean, and I think that we're going to see more and more of these things. And I think some of them, whether this one was intentional or not, is a question in my mind. But if you want to say it's intentional, that's fine. It certainly happened. It certainly caused a lot of problems. And some people are saying this is a dry run for something bigger, like November, when maybe they want to shut down something because the polling isn't going so well. So last Sunday, after I did my update, Joe Biden withdrew from office. He withdrew from running for president. I think I said last Sunday, if he can't run for president, how can he run the president's office? And I stand by that. And no sooner we got home, and he had withdrawn from the race. And I think he did that just to spite my update and to hurt the shelf life of my update. But I forgive him because I'm glad he's not running. Although I kind of wish he still was, with considering the alternative. And it's thrown everything into disarray. And I'll talk more about in a moment. Here's an editorial cartoon from the Times of London, the Olympic flight. I mean, I love editorial cartoons because sometimes I think they really, they're able to say in visuals what it would take a long time to say with words, as you can just see how many words I've used to describe an editorial cartoon that doesn't have any words. So then they had the Olympics opening in France. down the Seine River towards the Eiffel Tower. And the thing that was, there was some things that were interesting about it, but given the way these public events like the Grammys and other things have gone with the satanic occultic influence in recent years, one would hope that maybe the Olympics would escape, but it did not. And some people are more attuned to all of the occultic symbols than I am. I personally don't study it as much as others do. I see some of it, and very interesting light show that you see. Here's the Eiffel Tower. And I did see someone did a video, I can't remember who it was, that I thought was very good at picking out sort of the hidden meaning behind some of these occultic symbols. And so now, by the way, it's funny because a lot of Christians are outraged about what went on, rightfully so. And now a lot of other Christians are outraged that Christians are outraged. You know, it's okay for you to be outraged at the outrage of other Christians, you understand, because you're better than they are, I guess. It's so here's another symbol. I don't know if you remember the Macron when he was inaugurated. He had the red thing right above his eye, had the all-seeing eye, and the light at the pyramid there in front of the Louvre, all really clearly Masonic occultic symbols. And so what did they do? Well, one of the things they did was they had this white horse coming down the street. Now, and what happened was this horse came down. I'm not going to play the video because people have put videos on Twitter about this, showing the symbology and everything that's involved. And guess what Twitter's doing? They're taking them down because they violate copyright. Because now the Olympic staff is like, well, maybe we went too far. Well, you don't need to think about it. You did go too far. And so, look, it's outrageous, but it's also kind of interesting and indicative of the times that we live in and where we are on God's prophetic scale timeline, that they would choose like, well, let's use a white horse to lead the nations of the world in their march down the, I don't know if that's a Champs-Élysées or whatever. I've never been to Paris, so I don't know. I do remember, the one joke I remember about Paris is, why did they put trees along the Champs-Élysées? Because the German soldiers were complaining about marching in the sun. They wanted to march in the shade. But just look at and then coming down the Seine was this mechanized contraption. And they do really, you know, if you look at some of the things I use when I use symbols about the end times and the four horsemen of the apocalypse, it's sort of like, where did they get these ideas? And then where did they get the idea that this idea was a good idea that people might not notice or be a little bit outraged about? So here's this mechanized horse. It looked like it was running down the Seine River, like it was walking on water. But having seen the Seine River recently in some videos, I don't know that they needed to put them on the post. It could have just leapt from debris to debris and done the same thing. So then there was this outrageous bit, a bunch of drag queens and whatever mimicking the Last Supper. So this is what they did at the opening ceremonies at the Olympics. So you see how the imagery was done, that this is the Last Supper. So you had the nations of the world marching behind a white horse. You have these drag queens are showing they're transforming and changing into something else at the Last Supper, mimicking Jesus. I think the symbology and everything is very, very unmistakable here. Then they had this guy, and then this was sort of the end. And so now the Olympic Committee goes like, well, maybe we didn't send the right message. Well, I think you sent the message that you wanted to send. It's just that you're so wrapped up in your little protective bubble, intellectual, moral, cultural bubble, that you didn't realize that people might be offended offended by this. And we are. Now, look, I don't think you're going to see. So everybody says, well, this is to foment a civil war. And listen, we've been watching this stuff for years. I haven't seen Christians marching on Paris to take it over. You understand my point? There's a point where even Christians will denigrate other Christians for being concerned about this. And then this whole trans thing is a big deal. This is the front page of today's LA Times. I'm sure you've heard of this young lady, Chloe Cole, who transitioned, had a mastectomy at the age of 15, and then regretted it, like so many of them do. So today, on the front page of the New York Times, when someone like that comes out and testifies and talks about it, they're very compelling about how evil and dangerous and awful this whole experience is. So what does the media have to do now? We have to tear that person down. So what they do is, she's a right-wing hero. That's why you shouldn't listen to her. People on the right like her. They're concerned about her. They pray for her. Can't have that, because she's against the narrative. And then there was a rather rich guy, Elon Musk, who talked about his son who had transitioned. And he said, I was tricked into signing the documents to allow that to occur. So what's the result? The son has come out attacking his father. That lunatic witch that Elon used to live with and had a couple children with, although I think one or two of them were by surrogacy. Her name was Grimes. I mean, she's just like a witch. She says, I'm a witch. And she's attacking Elon now. And so Elon's kind of a very, maybe you should call his last name Merc. He's kind of a murky individual in terms of he wants all the technology stuff. He's like the richest transhumanist on the planet. And he's doing these things with the brain chips. But then again, there's some things that he does that we kind of like. He seems to be for free speech, but the people at X are still censoring a lot of posts. And so when people were posting about the Olympics and what happened at the Olympics, their posts are getting taken down for copyright strikes. And by the way, it's not copyright. So then what people did was, there's a lot of very smart people in the world. Instead of grabbing the videos off of YouTube or whatever, what they did was they held their phone up, as I've been doing sometimes, holding my phone up and actually recording what's on the screen. So I saw a video of Jake Sullivan, and he was standing with the White House in the background a couple weeks ago. And I don't like Jake Sullivan. I think, to me, he sort of fits the definition of pencil neck geek. And I think he's a very dangerous individual. His views, I'm not aware of any of his views that I would consider to be correct on anything at all. But he was talking about, the Biden White House is going to do this. And this was a couple weeks ago. This was when Joe Biden was fine. He was intellectually on top of everything. If you watched MSNBC and Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski. Oh, Joe Biden he's the most intellectually together guy we've ever had in the White House. Now they sort of changed their tune because that's not the media narrative that everybody's trying to push. But so while I was filming that, I noticed a Penske rental truck coming down the White House driveway behind Jake Sullivan. And I thought that might be prophetic that the guy there's moving out soon. That was a couple weeks ago. And by the way, this fire in Jasper, Alberta, the town of Jasper up there in the Canadian Rockies has just been devastating. The whole town, a lot of the town has been completely burned to the ground. But anyway, so back to Elon Musk. He's now called the gender heretic. Well, what's a heretic? That's someone who doesn't follow the correct, accepted theological doctrinal line. And so this is the National Post, which is, you understand this, they're not supporting the attack on Elon Musk. It's kind of a conservative paper, and so you'll find a lot of good information there. But that's how the world is viewing Elon Musk now, as the gender heretic. And then somebody posted this. This is a Barnes & Noble bookstore in St. Petersburg, Florida. Gay BCs, bye-bye binary, pink is for boys, the ABCs of queer history. By the way, this is the children's book section. You see what it says up there at the top? Little minds and big feelings. Because why? Everything is about feelings. I've said this many times. I was a trial lawyer. I used to go to seminars about how to be a better trial lawyer, how to present evidence. And it used to be about technical, stand at the podium. And if you're doing a timeline, start here and then move here and then move here. At federal court, by the way, you're not allowed to there's like a zone that you're allowed to be in when you're questioning a witness. And if you want to step to the front of the podium, you have to ask the judge's permission. But somewhere 25 years ago or so, those trial practice seminars changed from here is how you present effectively to here is how you appeal to people's emotions. It was an unmistakable change. And now you see it here, little minds and big feelings, because why? That's what we're about. So here's another thing that was there was an orchestra on stage playing. I don't know what they were playing. I can tell you what, the song they were playing had nothing to do with a golden calf. Why did they choose this? Why did somebody thinking like, hey, we've got an orchestra, we got the Olympic rings, let's put a golden calf on the stage? What's the thought process there? If there is there is a thought process, but I'm completely gobsmacked, as they say, in trying to figure out why you would do that. And remember, a couple years ago at the British Commonwealth Games, they had this, and they actually had a woman riding the beast. And if you look around, they had 70 nations, the same number as the nations in the table, and there was all this occultic, prophetic, biblical stuff. So, let's go to the middle of the week. I'm going to skip over some of the other stuff that happened with Joe Biden resigning. I'll get to that in just a moment. So here's Benjamin Netanyahu, after he spoke to Congress, going down to Mar-a-Lago and meeting with former President Trump. By the way, I don't even have anything on this. They had hearings about the Trump assassination attempt. They had the head of the Secret Service come in. 2 weeks ago this happened. So it was 9 or 10 days when she testified in Congress at the House. She didn't know an answer to anything. She resigned later that day. one of the worst performances I've ever seen. And then FBI Director Christopher Wray got up and testified, well, we don't know if it was a bullet. Something could have hit the teleprompter, and a piece of that shrapnel could have hit former President Trump in the ear. And then it was interesting. He says that the next day, the Washington Post, Time Magazine, the New York Times, and the FBI all say it was a bullet. And our FBI director, he should resign too. I mean, enough is enough, okay? This is, and I would say if I was the man there in the middle and I got elected, it certainly would be in the top 3 items on my list to fire that guy. And he will do this as all presidents do. He'll fire all the U.S. attorneys in the country and hire his own. So a few days before, Benjamin Netanyahu went to the House, or the joint session of Congress. Over 100 Democrats boycotted. Kamala Harris, well, I have to go to a sorority event in Indianapolis, so I can't preside over the Senate. When an important head of state of a country that's an ally of ours comes, I can't do that. I have to go to Indianapolis to the sorority convention or whatever it is. So here, this is just a few minutes of Netanyahu at Congress. It was Wednesday or Thursday. 4th time he's been there, more than any other head of state. To which all the Jew haters say, oh, see, we're controlled by the Jews. Now, some of the people in Israel saying, I don't like this speech. He didn't say anything. He didn't give a vision for Israel. And there are a lot of people in Israel that don't like Netanyahu. Some surveys say 70% of people think he should resign immediately. He's responsible for not taking care of October 7th. So this is not a pro-Bibi speech that I'm making. I'm just saying this speech was phenomenal. Now, maybe it lacked on a few details. And he got a very long standing ovation, as you can see.
Members of Congress, I now have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel.
The issue of Israel, as I have said, will be the most divisive issue in the evangelical church until Jesus returns. You can consider me a prophet on that. I'm speaking prophetically, I think, in that particular. I'm just trying to be wise here.
Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, Senator Ben Cardin, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Senators, members of Congress, distinguished guests. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the profound honor of addressing this great citadel of democracy for the 4th time. We meet today at a crossroads of history. Our world is in upheaval. In the Middle East, Iran's axis of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization. It's a clash between those who glorify death and those who sanctify life. For the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister
Sure what happened
With
here.
us today is Lieutenant Avichai Reuven. My friends, for more than 9 months, Israel's soldiers have shown boundless courage. With us today is Lieutenant Avichai Reuven. Avichai is an officer in the Israeli paratroopers. His family immigrated to Israel from Ethiopia. In the early hours of October 7th, Avichai heard the news of Hamas's bloody rampage. He put on his uniform, grabbed his rifle, but he didn't have a car. So he ran 8 miles to the front lines of Gaza to defend his people. You heard that right. He ran 8 miles, came to the front lines, killed many terrorists, and saved many, many lives. Avichai, we all honor your remarkable heroism. Another Israeli is with us here today, and he's stand up right next to Avichai. This is Master Sergeant Ashraf al-Bakhiri. Ashraf is a Bedouin soldier from the Israeli Muslim community of Rad. On October 7th, Ashraf too killed many terrorists. First, he defended his comrades in the military base, and he then rushed to defend the neighboring communities, including the devastated community of Kibbutz Be'eri. Like Ashraf, the Muslim soldiers of the IDF fought alongside their Jewish, Druze, Christian, and other comrades in arms with tremendous bravery. A third hero, Lieutenant Asa Sofer, is also here with us. Asa fought as an officer in the Tank Corps, and he was wounded in battle. He was wounded in battle while protecting his fellow soldiers from a grenade. He lost his right arm and the vision in his left eye. He's recovering, and incredibly, Within a short time, Asa will soon return to active duty as a commander of a tank company. I just learned there is a fourth hero here, Lieutenant Jonathan Ben Chamo, who lost a leg in Gaza and continued to fight. My friends, these are the soldiers of Israel, unbowed, undaunted, unafraid. As the Bible says, Am kelavi yakum. They shall rise like lions. They have risen like lions. The lions of Judah, the lions of Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, the men and women of the IDF come from every corner of Israeli society. Every ethnicity, every color, every creed, left and right, religious and secular. All are imbued with the indomitable spirit of the Maccabees, the legendary Jewish warriors of antiquity. With us today is Yechiel Leiter, the father of one of those Maccabees. Yechiel's father escaped the Holocaust and found refuge in America. As a young man, Yechiel moved to Israel and raised a family of 8 children. He named his eldest son, Moshe, after his late father. Moshe became an exemplary officer in one of our elite commando units. He served with distinction for 2 decades while raising 6 beautiful children of his own. On October 7th, Moshe volunteered to return to combat. 4 weeks later, he was killed when a booby-trapped mine exploded in a tunnel shaft right next to a mosque. At his son's funeral, Yechiel said this: "If the state of Israel had not been established after the Holocaust, the image engraved in our collective memory would have been the photograph of that helpless Jewish boy in the Warsaw Ghetto holding his hands up in the air with Nazi rifles pointed at him. But because of the birth of Israel," Yechiel continued, "because of the courage of soldiers like my son Moshe, the Jewish people are no longer helpless in the face of our enemies." That's why the mobs in Tehran chant death to Israel before they chant death to America. For Iran, Israel is first, America is next. So when Israel fights Hamas, we're fighting Iran. When we fight Hezbollah, we're fighting Iran. When we fight the Houthis, we're fighting Iran. And when we fight Iran, we're fighting the most radical and murderous enemy of the United States of America. And one more thing. When Israel acts to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons that could destroy Israel and threaten every American city, every city that you come from, we're not only protecting ourselves, we're protecting you. My friends, if you remember one thing from the speech, remember this: our enemies are your enemies. Our fight is your fight, and our victory will be your victory. Ladies and gentlemen, that victory is in sight. Israel's defeat of Hamas will be a powerful blow to Iran's axis of terror. Another part of that axis, Hezbollah, attacked Israel on October 8th, a day after the Hamas attack. It has launched thousands of missiles and drones against us. 80,000 of our citizens in northern Israel evacuated their homes, becoming effectively refugees in their own land. We are committed to returning them home. We prefer to achieve this diplomatically. But let me be clear. Israel will do whatever it must do to restore security to our northern border and return our people safely to their homes. Last Friday, a third Iranian proxy, the Houthis, attacked Tel Aviv with a deadly drone. It exploded a few hundred feet from the American consulate, killing one person and injuring 9. On Saturday, I authorized a swift response to that attack. All our enemies should know this. Those who attack Israel will pay a very heavy price. And as we defend ourselves, on all fronts, I know that America has our back. And I thank you for it. All sides of the aisle, thank you. My friends, for decades, America has provided Israel with generous military assistance, and a grateful Israel has provided America with critical intelligence that saved many lives. We've jointly developed some of the most sophisticated weapons on earth. I choose my words carefully. We've jointly developed some of the most sophisticated weapons on earth that help protect both our countries. And we also help keep we help keep Americans' boots off the ground while protecting our shared interests in the Middle East. I deeply appreciate America's support, including in this current war. But this is an exceptional moment. Fast-tracking U.S. military aid can dramatically expedite an end to the war in Gaza and help prevent a broader war in the Middle East. In World War II, as Britain fought on the front lines of civilization, Winston Churchill appealed to Americans with these famous words: "Give us the tools and we'll finish the job." Today, as Israel fights on the front line of civilization, I too appeal to America. Give us the tools faster and we'll finish the job faster. My dear friends, the war in Gaza could end tomorrow if Hamas surrenders, disarms, and returns all the hostages. But if they don't, Israel will fight until we destroy Hamas's military capabilities, end its rule in Gaza, and bring all our hostages home.
So that's the plan. So the next day, Prime Minister Netanyahu met with Joe Biden, met with Kamala Harris. I'm really conflicted right at the moment whether I want to play her response. Could I probably assume that you don't want to hear it? Okay, I'll paraphrase it. I'm not a very bright person. I've been able to kind of skate through life. My parents were Marxists. I've been an activist. I'm still an activist. And now I'm running for president of the United States. Oh, and by the way, you need to stop. Now, I will give her credit. She did something that I don't think Trump has done and Trump needs to do. So I will give her credit. There were some Americans killed on 10/7. There are 8 American hostages, and she named every one of them by name. So I will give her A+ for doing that. And Trump, if he, I doubt that he listens to me, but somebody who listens to me can tell him, you need to do the same thing, President Trump. You need to do that if you're serious. But then she progressed, as any progressive would, down the road. And she said, well, you know, you need to stop this war in Gaza, and people are starving, and there's no food, and people are suffering, and blah, blah, you know, on it, you know, all the left-wing lies. It was interesting. It was a couple days before, as I was researching this, I came across this chart published. It says national food availability, calories per 1,000 calories per person per day. So 4,500. That's, you know, more than you need. And what do they say? 2,100 calories is probably what's necessary. Gaza ranks in the top 30 of 187 countries in the world, according to current statistics. Everything they say about famine in Gaza is a lie. Kamala Harris is a liar. She is a radical progressive Marxist progeny of radical communist Marxist professor. The apple did not fall far from the tree. And then, I don't remember where I got this from. Oh, it's from the New York Times this morning. The ugly campaign to recast Harris is underway. And I could play you a mashup of like 20 newscasts, podcasts, where every one of them said, oh, the racist and sexist attacks against Kamala Harris have begun. Every single one used the exact same language. It's almost like they got talking points from somewhere. Because it was the exact same language. So she will be on the pantheon of saints, saintly people. By tomorrow, she will be above the Virgin Mary and Joan of Arc. You are in the midst of a propaganda campaign unlike anything you will ever see. And some polls say she's up or even with Trump. I don't think that it's a cakewalk. I don't know if she's still going to be around. I said this on a podcast the other day. If I were her, I would be tweeting out every hour, I'm not depressed, I'm not suicidal, that type of thing. And by the way, I went to a Go Therefore conference for a little bit Friday. My friend Derek Gilbert gave one of the most excellent talks on the history of Israel that I've ever heard in my life. You guys were there. You agree with that? Superb. So You may want to just sign up for the live stream from the Go Therefore conference just to get Derek's talk. It was superb. And I talked to him after. He sort of has the same problem I do, is that the clock is your enemy. And but you're going to see this makeover of Kamala Harris. So let's talk about the events of yesterday. So Netanyahu goes to see Trump. He saw Kamala Harris. He saw Joe Biden. Joe Biden resigned. We still have the hostages, American hostages in Gaza. By the way, the Israeli Olympic team, I think they're brave for going, because there were people in the French government who said, we don't like you, we don't want you here. And by the way, Bibi Netanyahu, you should never come to France again, because we hate you. Okay, and Gallant, they're bipartisan in their hatred of they hate all sides of the Israeli political spectrum, because they don't hate politics. And so the Israelis, I think it was their synchronized swimming team or somebody, they're not allowed to make any statements pro-Israel or anything like that. So they went to the pool and they did this. So I'd give them a round of applause for that, and a gold medal for that. And the American team should do the exact same thing if they had an ounce of courage, because there are American people being held hostage by those bloodthirsty, evil, subhuman people called Hamas. By the way, I need to say this. I don't have my slide for this. Thursday or Friday in Jerusalem Post, there was an article. A comedian named Zach Fox went to Israel, and he went up to Ramallah. So if you want to know geography, Ramallah, I'm going to say 6 miles from the north of the Temple Mount. So it's in the heart of Israel. It's in what they call the West Bank, or it's actually in the heart of Samaria. And on the way up there, you'll see that superstructure I've talked about many, many times at Tel Al-Ful, which is the unfinished palace of King Hussein of Jordan. He was building it in 1967, war happened. By the way, how did he ever get to build there? Because I thought Jordan was east of the Jordan River, because Jordan annexed the territory after the 1948 war. They had no right to it under international law. I'm going to be doing a little bit a separate podcast and talk on the history of Israel, and pray that I'll be able to get Natasha Hausdorff interview done so we can get her out to a wider audience. She's absolutely brilliant on the issue. But at Tel Al-Ful, by the way, King Hussein was building that palace over top of a biblical city called Gibeah. What's Gibeah? Gibeah was the tribal capital of the tribe of Benjamin. Where did the first king, King Saul of Israel, first king of Israel, King Saul, come from? Gibeah. Look it up. What was King Hussein trying to say when he did that? I'm building my palace over the home of your first king because I'm superior and I'm in charge. And the 67 war started. You go to Jerusalem, drive up Highway 60, up towards Ramallah, you'll see it. It's on one of the highest points, maybe the highest point in the whole area. Because he was building it up there so everybody in Jerusalem could see where he had built his palace. It was a religious, political statement of epic proportions. So this American comedian, his name's Zach Fox, I think it's in the Jerusalem Post Friday. And he went to Ramallah to interview people. Hey, what do you think of Israel? What do you think of the hostages? Do you like Jews? So Ramallah, by the way, that's the capital of the Palestinian Authority. He was shocked. Every single person said they supported and loved Hamas. He asked one guy, he said, wait a minute, I don't understand. Do you know that Israel's mentioned over 100 times in the Quran? The guy looks at him. Do you want the hostages to come home? Everybody asked, said, no, they should stay there. We hate Jews. That's man on this. Now, listen, I don't believe it's 100% like that. What I'm telling you is that the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, is on the point of exploding. And Israel needs to beat Hamas. They need to beat Hezbollah. They need to beat the Houthis. And if they don't, this sounds, the defeat has to be dramatic, complete, and humiliating. That's the mindset that you have. That's how you defeat that mindset. Now, that's not very popular, even in Israel now. But I'm just telling you, I've thought a lot about this. I've read a lot of papers, intelligence reports. I'm just telling you I don't know how you get around it. And the Muslims do not understand how things are. Somebody sent me this Instagram video that came up this week. This is a Muslim man speaking to someone about Israel. This is very interesting.
You have so many Muslims around the world who are named after Jewish prophets without making the connection. It's so hilarious that you have a Muslim named Dawood, and then he says Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine. But he is named after the king who proclaimed Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Right.
So you see this contradiction. You see Hamas. By the way, you see Hamas logo for this battle that they call the Battle of Al-Aqsa flood. You see them quoting the Quran, the verse "Idkhulu alayhim al-bab." This verse the Quran was praising two people for saying this. You know who are the two people? The spies of Israel, Joshua and Caleb. So Hamas is quoting Joshua and Caleb for doing this. You have a terrorist organization in Egypt, Sinai. It's called Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis. Ansar in Arabic is the allies. They are called the allies of Bayt al-Maqdis. Muslims are repeating the word Bayt al-Maqdis without knowing that it comes from the Hebrew word Bayt HaMikdash. So these terrorists should be friends with Israel. They are called the allies of Bayt HaMikdash, the allies of the Jewish temple.
Wow.
So you should make amends with Israel and recognize its existence.
Wow.
Education is you see this Huawei, I was saying this Huawei when I was in Paris when Rachel was telling me this.
Yeah.
I was saying, no, Bayt al-Maqdis is an Arabic word. She told me, hey, I'm sorry. Bayt al-Maqdis comes from Bayt al-Mikdash. So you got it, guys, first. We got it first. We got it first. Not so many Muslims know.
Isn't that interesting? So on their own language, it says quite a bit. So I'm going to talk to you about what happened yesterday. There was an attack on Majal Shams. Majal Shams is located in the north of Israel. I'll show you a map right now. Killed 12 people, injured many, many more. It was children playing soccer. It was all young kids that were killed. And Hezbollah came out and said, well, it's not our rocket. And the head of the Israel IDF came out and said, well, it's an Iranian rocket, and it's the kind you've been using. It had like 120 pounds of explosives on it or something like that. And it made a big crater, killed a lot of people. Some of these are blurred out so you don't see the complete devastation. So there's a video of everything happen. And of course, the BBC, being such an objective reporting agency, they came out and said, children dead in attack on football pitch in Israeli-occupied Golan. It's a Druze village. Druze is kind of it's an ethnic group. They live in the north. Their effective capital in Israel is Majal Shams, away in the north of Israel. And you can see this. You can see the Lebanon border there, Mount Hermon. You see Gajar. You see Tel Dan area, Kiryat Shimona, Metula. So it's way in the north, and it's elevated. It's kind of high up. A lot of terraces for farming and vineyards and agricultural fields and whatever around. And by the way, I was told by somebody in Israel today, yeah, the farmers are still planting up there. But now the question is, are they going to be able to harvest this fall the crop when it's coming up in the very near future? Here's some other, this was a bomb shelter next to the soccer field. But you can see the rocket came in so fast and so close they didn't have time to get to the bomb shelter. 12 dead, many injured. Here's a sort of a three-dimensional map. You see Beirut here on the left. You see Majel Shams there at the base of Mount Hermon. Caesarea Philippi is just down the road, Tel Dan. There's Mount Hermon. There's Beirut. There's Damascus. And by the interesting geographic thing, Majel Shams is about halfway between the north, Capernaum and Damascus. By the way, this is Metula, and you can see Metula is surrounded on many sides by Lebanon. And so it's empty. A lot of the buildings have been destroyed. And so you can see, like, you're at this one building here in Metula, and then there's Hezbollah right across the fence. And we didn't drive up that far, but we drove along a lot of that fence when we were there once. And the villagers are there, and I have guys I've interviewed, Avraham Levine from Alma Research, and he says, well, there are Christian villages. I used to go over there when I was a kid. Now it's like miles and miles and miles away. In fact, if you want to go from Majel Shams to Damascus, it's only 30 miles. But you have to drive 303 kilometers, which is about 165 miles to get there. Why? And cross a bunch of international. You have to go to Jordan, then over to Syria, then up. So it's 30 miles away, but it might as well be 2 states away here in the United States. And by the way, they're, 50 miles or so from Beirut. So that's the route that they would have to travel to get to Beirut. And add about 3 or 4 hours onto that. It's about 8-hour drive if everything goes perfectly well. And it shows you the isolation of Israel from its neighbors is what's going on. Trump did tweet about the attack on Majel Shams. Today's attack on Israel cannot be forgotten. It will go down as another moment in history created by a weak and ineffective United States president and vice president. With time, the situation will only get worse for our country. It must galvanize the Republican Party, Democrats, independents, conservatives, progressives, libertarians, and everyone else to put strength, respect, and power back into the USA. I agree with him. The head of the EU Foreign Office, the foreign minister of the EU, so within an hour of the attack, this dweeb, that's a sort of a technical term, it means a moron of a special category. Shocking images from the soccer field in the Druze town of Majel Shams. I strongly condemn this bloodbath. We need an independent international investigation into this unacceptable incident. We urge all parties to exercise utmost restraint and avoid further escalation. A friend of mine sent me this morning, and I forgot one thing at the end of this, but he put this on the tweet, the copy of the tweet that he said. There's a question mark after that. Is he mental? And you need to understand what Hezbollah is doing. Hezbollah is engaged in a campaign. I'm going to go about another 14 minutes, and I have an obligation. I told my wife, I'm aware of that obligation. I know what time it is. And so this is Netanyahu. And what it says, these are pictured at almanar.com.lb. That's Hezbollah's media site. It's a TV, videos, that sort of thing. And so here's Bibi, of course, and you see the targeting that's sort of been overlaid on this. And it says, the third destruction and Bibi's fate is what that Arabic language part says. This is Another tweet taken to somebody in the area of the Golan Heights or along the Lebanon border. In the Arabic language says, Israel, the hell of the north and difficult choices. There's another picture that was at Al-Manar. The north is on fire. The north is burning. Because they're trying to make a point. This is what they want to do. There was a drone shot down this week that was heading out into the Mediterranean to the Israeli gas fields. But you don't hear about this. I mean, you've got to really dig to find this. And so my concern is this. 12 Jewish children were killed. And everybody in Israel is fired up. We've got to do something about Hezbollah and do it dramatically and do it right now. But I need to tell you, as Benjamin Netanyahu said at Congress, thousands of rockets and drones have been launched since October 7th from Hezbollah. And before that, a dozen Israeli civilians had been killed. And one of my friends who writes for media in the Middle East said, what are we doing about the 12 people dead up there? 12 civilians, let alone 30 soldiers. Hezbollah has now lost 500 soldiers. And remember the memorial page that Hezbollah does at Al-Manar, every single one of those pages says, on the road to Jerusalem, he was martyred. That's what this is about. So this is, JNS, Yaakov Lapin, great interview he did a few weeks ago with Carolyn Glick at JNS YouTube channel. How should Israel respond to Hezbollah's rocket attack? And he makes a very good point. We need to do something. We need to do something dramatic. Everybody in Israel says, and so something may have happened since we've been here. What I do know is I pulled off the red alert for the Model Shams attack yesterday, and there's been 100 rockets, missiles, whatever, fired from Hezbollah since. Over 100. I would highly recommend that you get one of those red alert apps. There's 2 of them, and it will kind of give you, I mean, it's like goes off constantly at certain times of the day because Hezbollah is attacking. And when it was October 7th, it was rockets coming from Gaza. Those still come, by the way. And the drones, in some respects, are getting through. Now, this was an interesting thing. This is Al Jarida, a newspaper, Arabic language newspaper in Kuwait. And the other day, I think it was the morning of Netanyahu's speech, Al Jarida, or it was the next morning, Al Jarida reported, hey, Hezbollah is getting special rockets from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Now, why would a newspaper in Kuwait be passing along information about weapons being supplied to Hezbollah all the way over here in Lebanon, 800 miles away? Because Hezbollah and Iran, this is a war with Iran everywhere in the Middle East. Iran is using locals, but it's a war against Iran, Persia. And by the way, this was on the front page of the Global Times in China the other day. See that picture? That picture, see that picture right there? What is that? That's a picture from Beijing earlier this week. China. What is it? It's all of the factions of the Palestinian people signing a cooperation agreement at the direction of Xi, the dictator in charge of China. Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, was in Moscow yesterday meeting with Vladimir Putin. So what you're seeing is Russia and China pushing Hamas, pushing the Palestinian factions, and they say Putin's our best friend. It bothers me that a lot of people on the right are falling for this propaganda. And what Xi wants is he wants to get the contracts to rebuild Gaza. Because, I mean, it's destroyed. It's destroyed. Carolyn Glick at JNS has a great article today called "The Hour of Israeli Leadership Has Arrived." And she and Seth Frantzman, also over at the Jerusalem Post, have done pulled out the information from Al Jazeera that I mentioned. And what Carolyn reports on is that it's scary. I mean, I've talked to people in Israel this morning. It's scary what's going on. EMP weapons to shut down the power grid. And intelligence analysts that I've seen have said if that happens, Israel will be unrecognizable in 72 hours. Hezbollah knows that. So Hezbollah, through Kuwait, is pushing out propaganda to scare everybody. Here's Nasrallah doing a speech a few weeks ago, and this is what he said. What we did on the front, the Lebanon-Israel front, is something big and unprecedented in the history of the entity. The entity knows that there will be no place in the entity that is safe from our missiles and drones. We have a complete and real target bank, and we have the ability to reach these targets, which shakes the foundations of the entity. Because this entity has foundations, in any case, they understand what I am saying. The entity, knows that what awaits him in the Mediterranean is also very big. Drone going towards the Karish gas field. That's very important to Israel's water supply. They use the gas to power desalination plants and have fresh water. And Israel's a water power, but so Hezbollah is sitting up there. This guy's sitting in a bunker. He probably would melt if he saw the sun. And then Hezbollah released this video. I found this over at the Alma Research. And what this is this is a video of Hezbollah drone video that was taken, and you'll see here in a moment, the different bases, air bases and military bases of Israel that they flew the drone around and took high definition videos. And so the thing goes on, and over at Alma Research, you should go to Alma Research and you should look at that. They even got the military base in the Galilee. You see what they're doing. You see these I've been through some of these intersections. This is Hezbollah drones flying around Israel. And part of it says this. So it says this, Alma in their review of this said, is noteworthy that although Hezbollah is introducing a previously undisclosed ability to operate UAVs during nighttime, it appears that this capability is still restricted. But what they're doing is they're releasing these videos on the Almanar website. Go check it out. Open it in Chrome. It'll translate it just go up and click on English in your address bar. It will translate everything for you. This is, I think, the port of Haifa in the video. And as Alma rightly says, this is being done to terrify the people of Israel. As Prime Minister Netanyahu said in the speech at Congress, 80,000 people have left their homes in the north. They call them internal refugees. I personally view them almost equivalent to hostages. They don't live in their home. They can't go home. And they were also, my understanding is, told this week that your children, you 80,000 people who have children, your children will not go to school for the second year in a row. I don't think we really grasp what's going on. Al Akbar, which is also their newspaper arm, had a thing here published And they talk about their drones and that type of thing, and they call them kings of heaven. Their missiles and that type of thing. This is how Hezbollah looks. And then they have all these different things. And so this is what it says in Al Akbar newspaper yesterday. Fleeing residents, the government abandoned the northern colonies, huge material damage and fear for settlement. So Carolyn goes on and says in her article on JNS, and you need to go read it. Go to jns.org, and you just click on opinions and go down and click on her name, and you'll find that the hour of Israeli leadership has arrived. And she's right. I mean, there's a big problem that Israel has to deal with. Now, Hillel Feld, who is the brother of Ari Fold, I don't know if you remember, a very emotional update, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. On the way to church, Avi Ablo popped up in my feed, and he was weeping. And he said, Ari Fold, my friend, is dead. And I've been down to Efrat. I've been by the shopping center where Ari Fold was stabbed in the back, severed his aorta. He chased down the kid who did it and shot and killed him, and then dropped over dead. He was, what Netanyahu, my view of Ari Fold was he was this kind of larger than life guy. And he would fit the description that Benjamin Netanyahu did in his speech, a lion of Judah. He lived in Judah, and he loved Israel, and a terrorist took him out. So his brother today says this. I'm just going to read his tweet because I think it's very important that you see it. The time has come, listen up. Israel will now send Lebanon back to the Stone Ages, and here is your homework. When Israel does what it needs to do and Lebanon begins to look like Gaza, before opening your mouth, go back and count the number of posts you wrote about the thousands of rockets that Hezbollah has fired indiscriminately into Israel for the last 9 months. None? Not a single one? Then sit this one out and keep your mouth shut. Hezbollah killed 10, it's actually 12, and maybe more, Druze children today who were playing soccer. Israel has the moral responsibility now to go to war. Inevitably, as soon as Israel retaliates, the global media will go to work to try and vilify Israel. Take a good look. This is Beirut, the before picture. Make a mental note because it will never look like this again after today's massacre of children playing soccer. Red lines weren't only crossed today, they were decimated. Hezbollah is about to find out. And I think he's right. So this has been a very significant week. I have a number of comments from some Jewish rabbis, and the hour's late and I got a late start. So I will do those. There are links to each of the full videos of these rabbis. And again, it's not an endorsement of everything that they say. I'll tell you what, I'm going to play one of the clips because I came across it today. It's a guy named Burrell Solomon. You can find the full hour and 7-minute video, and it was called Finding Mashiach. It's a guy who became an Orthodox Jew, who's moved to Israel. I think he lives in Israel now. And he did a thing. He went around and interviewed a bunch of people about, is this the time of Mashiach? Now listen, we know there's a major disagreement on the identity of the Messiah. But I would just suggest that maybe we need to figure out, as a Christian community, how to redirect this desire, this awakening that's occurring within the Jewish people for the soon return of Mashiach. As the one rabbi said, I will do a midweek update this week, and I will talk about it. But he said, this is the generation of Mashiach. And maybe we're the worst generation of Jews to bring this about ever. But we may be because of that, we may be the generation, because you see, if to get to Mashiach, you have to climb a 10,000-foot wall, and you've climbed 9,999 and a half feet, you still have to be the generation to climb that last half a foot, even though you're like the most unworthy generation. I love the way they put things sometimes, because there is a synergy there with our faith, if we admit it. And I don't know. So, and they talk about Gog and Magog, and this video is one that I'm not going to play.
But
And he says, listen, this is, he makes an interesting comment. You know, these prophecies are very difficult. Gog, Magog, who is it? What is it? How does it happen? And just go to Bible Prophecy Teacher, go to a Bible Prophecy Conference and see all the disagreement about that particular issue, right? You guys were just at one, but there was a lot of disagreement among people because it's different. And he said, sometimes we have to wait until Mashiach comes, and then we look back and say, oh, so that is how that was going to be fulfilled. Have I not been saying that for a long time? So maybe that's the way it goes. There's also this, so that's Rabbi Dr. Yitzhak Breitowitz. I don't know if I said that right. You should have spelled it better phonetically if you wanted me to say it right. This is Rabbi Weinstein. And again, he said that at the time of Mashiach, it may be, and he looked at Benjamin Netanyahu's speech. The world's abandoned us. The world is against us. And he said, that may be more the time of Mashiach coming than any other time. Why? Because we can only rely on God. I'm telling you, there is an awakening that is coming about, and I want to be part of it. We need to pray for wisdom. So here is Mr. Burrell or Benel Solomon, looking for Mashiach, finding Mashiach. It's about an hour long, but here's just about a 5 or 6 minute clip. And I promise I will finish with this, but it's so, is interviewing 2 rabbis. I think they're interesting.
Rabbi Manis Friedman, thank you for being here with us. Appreciate it.
it is a pleasure, and the topic is important. We have to do this. It's not even optional.
Let's jump right in. So, Rabbi, I guess let's cut to the chase. Mashiach, the Messiah, big concept. At the end of the day, who is the guy? Is he flesh and blood? Is he an angel? Who are we talking about over here?
That is fundamental. That is really crucial. Rambam says, it should not enter your mind that Mashiach will perform miracles. The whole idea of giving the Torah at Mount Sinai, of 3,000 years of observing God's commandments, right? It is all because there is a divine potential in nature. By keeping the commandments, observing the commandments, we're bringing out and revealing the divine that is concealed and hidden in nature, which means Mashiach has to be a human being. The whole point is humans have the potential to be godly. Nature has the potential to be godly.
So he's a regular person.
Regular human
He
being.
has a heart that beats,
Now, we
eyes that
obviously
sees.
disagree, right?
He
how do we
is
use
wa-
this?
Is he alive right now?
He must be,
Share what we believe.
because he has to come tomorrow.
So I've learned that Mashiach could come one of 2 ways. One is we're in such dire straits that there's no other option and he's going to have to come and save the day. Or we earned it and he's going to come and reward us for earning his arrival.
So the Rebbe has said many times, it's both. When we're so desperate for the truth, you can describe it in one of 2 ways. So you've never been so low, you've hit rock bottom. On the other hand, you've never been so ready. The world has never been so ready.
And the world's going to listen to him.
The world will listen to him because the world is desperate for leadership. Like, which country admires its own president or king or whatever, prime minister?
It seems that you're pretty hopeful that any moment now that Mashiach is going to come.
Well, first, it's inevitable. And we're getting really close to the deadline. We desperately need it to be more than soon, but now, because the stage is set, everybody is ready, and there's no reason that it can't happen immediately.
I'm excited for my next interview, which is with Rabbi Lawrence Hagioff. He's the author of a book called A Guide to the Jewish Messiah, Israel and the End of Days. I'm particularly interested to go meet with him because a lot of people are talking about the end of days, Gog and Magog, the ultimate war that will happen before the time of Mashiach. And it feels like the war of Gog and Magog is right here, right now, playing out in front of us. And I need to hear from him exactly what his thoughts are. Rabbi Lawrence Hagioff, thank you so much for being here with us. I guess since you wrote the book, you probably know a little bit about the subject. And there's a big discussion that at the end of days, there will be something called the War of Gog and Magog. And are we there? Are we in the middle of it? Are we at the end of it? I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So the idea of Gog and Magog appears in the prophets. Ezekiel, the prophet, speaks about it, and Zechariah speak about this idea of some final battle. Most of the commentators, however, tell us this will be 3 separate battles, all of them taking place in Israel, and the nations of the world are going to come, collaborate in order to fight against Israel. We're not too sure who these nations are exactly, because they're given different names in the prophets. However, one does stand out that we do know, and that is Paras, Persia, which is modern-day Iran. So many of the commentators nowadays look at this as a sign that what we're going through right now are relating to this particular prophecy of Ezekiel and Zechariah.
What are the things that this man has to do in order for us to confidently call him the Mashiach?
He's got to fight the wars of God. He's got to build the 3rd and final temple in Jerusalem. And most importantly, he's got to be the final catalyst to bring every single Jew back to the land of Israel. He's going to be a king. Kingship, royalty is going to return to our people. He's got other jobs as well, but that's his main mission, to bring peace and return the Jewish people to the land of Israel.
Do you think that we're in the final moments before Mashiach?
I have no doubt. I'm 100% sure that we are right now living in the pre-Messianic times. The signs given to us by our prophets and by our sages even after the prophets, it's very, very clear.
That was an incredible interview.
So there's a lot to be said about that. I'm well aware of what Jesus said about deception. I've shared with you the video of Peter Jennings interviewing a rabbi at the Western Wall 25 years ago. What will Mashiach do? Answer, well, he will rebuild the temple and bring peace to mankind. Now, we need to take that and work with it to point people to the truth of Jesus Christ. That's my point. And so we see all this talking about peace and the Abraham Accords. We're going to have the Abraham Accords. Everything's going to work out. I've also shared with you some things about what's sort of been coming from Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and some changes that are coming in the Middle East. Governments, monarchies falling, other people being replaced, and everybody coming into alignment for the Abraham Accords. That sounds a lot like Psalm 83, right? Okay, look, I'm way over time. I appreciate you staying. I'm not going to apologize for being over time. You know, I believe the Lord has led me to do this. And so, he's in charge. And so, blame him for all the things that are happening in the world. It is very, very crazy. So we're going to see a lot of things coming soon. So pray for wisdom. Pray for opportunities to share the gospel. Learn what people believe so you can use it to direct them to what we think is the truth, right? So let's pray. Lord, we just pray for wisdom in this time. It is we're grateful that you've given us the opportunity to live at this time, to watch these things unfold, to watch them unfold quickly and all at the same time. But it's also troubling. We pray that you will give us inner peace, give us wisdom, give us opportunities to share the glorious gospel of Jesus Christ with those around us, and to protect people from deception, whatever direction that's coming from. Pray that you will help us to do this as we live in the time, as the one rabbi said, we live in the time of the birth pangs. And birth pangs are difficult, but they lead to a birth. And just help us, Lord, at this time. In Jesus' name, amen.